What's up, guys? In this video, we're going to take a look at an endgame build for Sorcerer designed around three things: fun to play, doesn't get one shot, and uses Meteor. It's such a dope spell, I just want to use it! This is an infinite mana build that plays very fast with lots of buttons and has max survivability without sacrificing too much damage. I also wanted to make the build accessible, meaning you don't need any uber uniques or crazy endgame gear for it to function. Now the sad reality is, while it scales well early, the late game damage on Meteor is really bad right now. At first, I tried investing all my resources into maxing out Meteor damage, and it just didn't work. The damage feels extremely underwhelming compared to other abilities, even if you're at rank 13 Meteor. Because of this, we are using the magic of the Starfall Coronet unique helmet to actually turn Meteor into a utility spell. Starfall Coronet does something pretty incredible to Meteor that really changes the way we can use it, and that is because it turns it into a cooldown. Now there's a couple really cool things this does for us. First, it removes the mana cost, so we no longer have to worry about our mana or using any gear, affixes, or tempers for resources, which means we can use those slots for more offense and survivability. Second, because it is now a cooldown, it procs your protection skill, which makes it so every time you press a cooldown, you get a 30% max life barrier. So now every Meteor cast will be refreshing this barrier. And finally, becoming a cooldown gives it insane synergy with Ice Blades and the Ice Blades enchantment. When Ice Blades attack, they reduce the cooldowns on all your abilities. With Enchanted Ice Blades, when you spend 40 seconds worth of cooldowns, you automatically summon free Ice Blades. So the more cooldowns you press, the more Ice Blades you spawn. And the more Ice Blades you spawn, the more they are attacking, and thus the faster your cooldowns get reduced. This in turn lets you press your cooldowns more often. If you're pressing your cooldowns more often, you're summoning more Ice Blades, which are giving you more cooldown reduction, which is letting you press more cooldowns to get more Ice Blades. And this, my friends, is the positive feedback loop of Ice Blade's destruction. Now the beauty of this concept with this build is that Meteor is now a cooldown. So it not only feeds into spawning more Ice Blades, it also has its cooldown charges massively reduced by all the Ice Blades that are attacking. So with the Starfall Coronet, casting Meteor now costs no mana, gives us a 30% max life barrier, and spawns more Ice Blades. But most importantly, it lights the ground on fire to trigger burning. This burning ground is going to spawn enchanted firewalls, and we're going to use these firewalls along with Flameweaver unique gloves to let Firebolt carry our damage. Using Firebolt with these gloves is by far the strongest scaling damage we have right now as sorcerers. So before we go any further, I want to give you guys a realistic idea of where the power of this build is at versus other builds, so you can decide if it's right for you. Keep in mind, all of my gear in all these clips is at its highest at Masterwork level 8. I would have loved to take all my gear to 12 and show you guys the absolute maximum power of this build, but I simply do not have the time right now, and I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for this video, and so I really just wanted to get the idea out there to you guys and go from there. With all my gear at Masterwork level 8, I'm able to clear up to around Pit Tier 80. And at this point, we're still not dying, we're just running out of time. If I were to take all of my gear to Masterwork level 12, I could surely hit Pit Tier 90, and if I was able to get a couple gear upgrades, specifically better Flame Weavers, and a couple more Pyromancy attack speed tempers, I definitely think this build has the potential to crest 100. And remember guys, this is with no UBERS. Now there's something really relevant here that I want to bring up. With my gear only at Masterwork level 4, I was able to consistently farm Pit Tier 60 and 61 in about 7-minute runs without ever getting one shot. This is important because Pit Tier 60 gives you the max amount of Ingolith you need to improve your gear to Masterwork level 8, and Tier 61 gives you access to your first Neath Iron, which is needed to take your gear to the max Masterworking level of 12. Something that was really important to me with this build is I wanted to be able to easily deal with the bosses in the pit. In my opinion, mobbing in the pit is super fun, but the bosses are just super annoying. So I wanted to make a build where I could just zone out and face tank pit bosses without worrying about getting one shot or having to dodge anything. This build has basically accomplished that, and all it takes is mashing the shit out of your buttons and building your max life to around 3200, which may seem like a lot, but it's actually quite easy if you just keep your eye out for greater affix max health rolls and run rubies. And then you're going to drink an Elixir of Fortitude, and that's going to bring you to right around 40,000 health, which is basically the sweet spot for not getting one shot by the Pit 60 and 61 bosses right now. And remember guys, this is all before the changes to the pit that are coming in a few days with the mid-season patch of 1.4.3, so it's going to be even easier for you after that. And I know we're not super excited about the Sorcerer changes, guys, I'm right there with you, but there are actually quite a few small changes that directly affect this build that when stacked together are going to make a significant difference, so this build is going to be receiving a nice little buff when the patch hits on June 17th. So I wanted to test this pit boss thing a bunch to really make sure it worked against all the different bosses. So on Friday, I did almost 50 runs of Pit Tier 60 and farmed close to 2,500 Ingolith so I could bring all my gear up to Masterwork 8 and test the power for you guys there. I was honestly very surprised by the power difference between all my gear at Masterwork 4 and then all my gear at Masterwork 8 because I did it all at one time. you're actually going to get a big power spike when you make this jump, even though it's only an average of 20% increase to the affixes on your gear. And when I thought about this a bit more, it actually makes a lot of sense, because every small increase you make to the stats on your gear make every multiplicative modifier you're running slightly more effective. So your gear stats are not only getting 20% beefier, but also every equation multiplier, like the bonus effects on all of our glyphs, are multiplying against that 20% increase value. Now, I think the biggest difference you're going to feel playing this build versus other meta builds in higher tier pit is that mobbing is going to be a bit more challenging, but bossing is going to be a bit easier. And that's mainly because Frozen Orb, Blizzard, and Ball Lightning all have really strong crowd control between freezes and stuns to lock down big groups of mobs and not let them touch you. With this build, we have a lot of Immobilize, which gives us really good boss stagger, but it only stops the movement of mobs instead of completely freezing or stunning them. So anything rooted next to you or mobs that are ranged can all still attack, cast spells, etc. Now, in my personal opinion, this makes mobbing a bit more fun and interesting, because instead of just standing there casting Frozen Orb over and over, we actually have to play strategically into the strengths of our class. This means positioning and tactics are going to become very important again, which I think was sort of the original intent for the class design. So I was also able to kill Tormented Grigor pretty early on with all my gear only at Masterwork 4, and this is important because he drops Flame Weavers. So if you're using your Stygian Stones to farm him early, you have a higher chance to get some greater affix Flame Weavers with max rolls. I really hope you have better luck than me though, because I've used almost all my stones on him and have not seen a single GA Flame Weaver or a 70% affix roll. So the Flame Weavers I'm using in these clips are quite average. Finding goated Flame Weavers are going to give you the biggest damage increase out of any piece of gear with this build. The main thing that's important with our Starfall Coronet is that it has the max roll for the unique affix, which puts the meteor cooldown at 6 seconds. A good roll on cooldown reduction and max life is also pretty sweet. Yesterday when I got everything to Masterwork 8, I tried Tormented Varshan and was able to get him after a few tries, although it did take a little bit to whittle him down. I'm probably going to wait until I have better Flame Weavers and am closer to Masterwork 12 before I go after Tormented Duriel and Andariel. The main thing that's important with these Tormented boss fights is dodging the primary mechanic, because that is what gives you the stacking debuff. If you can dodge everything and not get any stacks, the bosses do basically nothing to you. So between Teleport and Flame Shield being on really low cooldown with our Ice Blades up, and our dodge getting reset very quickly from our fast attacks with our Bootafix, this build is actually quite good at avoiding those mechanics. Now, the biggest downside with this build is we don't have 100% uptime on Firewall. You'll notice in these clips when the Firewall X pops up under stuff, I get a huge damage spike for the next 3 seconds because my Flame Weavers are splitting the Firebolts into 3 projectiles, then multiplying all their damage by 70%. These gloves are busted. The problem is that the Firewall Lucky Hit effect only procs off of burning, not all damage. We only have 3 sources of burning: our Firebolt, our Fire Shield, and the ground left by our Meteor. This means it's going to be very important to keep the ground burning from our Meteor to proc more Firewalls. This will be most noticeable when you're bossing because there's only one target to burn. When you're mobbing, it's a lot easier to get Firewalls up because you have a bunch of targets burning at the same time. So I hope that gives you guys a good picture of where the power for this build is at. Everything else in Sanctuary you're going to be able to absolutely crush with this build, so Nightmare Tier 100, Hell Tides, and anything in the overworld is toast. Alright, let's get into how to actually play the build. The rotation can be as simple as mashing all your buttons as fast as you can while holding down Firebolt. And this is going to take care of most everything, including those pesky pit bosses. When you're starting to push higher tier content and getting deeper into the pit, the rotation becomes quite a bit more involved when you're mobbing, but in a very fun way. Here's what you're going to want to do when shit's getting dangerous. Pull with Meteor to get a barrier, and then instantly summon Ice Blades to start your cooldown reduction loop. We need a few seconds to spool up Ice Blades, so start casting Firebolts to activate your Hectic aspect. Since only our Meteor and Ice Blades are on cooldown at this point, the CDR from basic attacking with Hectic is going to feed into one or the other. As mobs start to converge on you, pepper the ground in front of you with Meteors to get Immobilizes out, start the ground burning, and spawn more Ice Blades. The most important thing to do with this build to really make it work is to press Ice Blades instantly every time it comes off cooldown. Once you're spooled up, this is literally going to be like every 2 to 3 seconds. Ice Blades has a super fast cast time now, so this really isn't going to slow down your Firebolt DPS. Once all your Ice Blades are up attacking stuff, your Meteor cooldown is basically going to be unlimited. Holding down Firebolt while continuously pressing Ice Blades and Meteor is going to keep your cooldown reduction loop rolling, so make sure to sort of prioritize this rotation. If you need to spool up quicker, you can throw your other cooldowns in at the beginning to get up an extra Ice Blades. I like to teleport in and activate Flame Shield to burn everything for the Firewall procs and get a big stun. You'll want to try to use your Ice Armor like a second or 2 before Flame Shield expires, and this will let it build up its barrier from the damage you're dealing without it getting instantly knocked off from damage. From here, you're basically looking for Firewall procs while maintaining your cooldown reduction loop, and this is why positioning with this build is very important. You're constantly looking to shoot your Firebolts through the Firewalls that are spawning, because this is going to amp your damage by a ton. If you're not getting enough firewalls while mobbing, it's likely because you're not dropping enough meteors. You basically want to create this big lake of fire and continuously kite everything through it. I like to coat the ground between me and mobs with meteors so they're all running through the fire, and then when they all get to me, use Flame Shield to pump for 2 more seconds. As soon as it explodes and stuns everything, teleport to the other side of the fire pit you just made so they all have to run back through it again to get to you. Remember that Firebolt only penetrates burning targets, so stacking everything up like this and getting it burning in your meteor ground is a great way to pen through everything. When you see a good firewall pop up, try to position it right between you and the clump of mobs so you can machine gun Firebolt through it and completely destroy everything. The only time you really don't want to cast Meteor is when you get one of those perfect firewalls where you can pen through everything with Firebolt, and this is because Meteor has a bit of a cast time, so it does slow down our Firebolt DPS by just a bit. The more you play this build, the more you'll start to feel this balance between constantly calling down meteors and occasionally pausing for 2 to 3 seconds to just let your Firebolt rip. Ice Blades is the one cooldown that you really want to try to press literally every time it's up, even when you're unloading with Firebolt. This is because if you don't, your cooldown reduction loop will start to slow down, and all your abilities, including your meteor, will start to have much longer cooldowns. Now when you're pushing your limit in the pit and shit's getting real spicy, you'll want to start using the terrain to your advantage. Especially when there are a lot of ranged mobs attacking you, it's best to try to pull everything back into a choke point that you just continuously smash with meteors. This is going to make everything have to run up to that choke point to reach you, and then it will get caught in your meteor immobilize. Since there's so many mobs stacked here burning, you're basically guaranteed some firewalls, so you can just spray everything down with firebolts. If stuff gets through to you, kite backwards a bit, then teleport back to the other side of the choke point and do the same thing on the other side. For most bosses, you're literally going to be able to stand there and mash all your buttons over and over while holding Firebolt. This is going to give you max CDR on everything, max amount of shields you can possibly get, and even though casting everything slows down your Firebolt DPS this a bit, this basically gives you sort of pseudo immortality. When you get to the higher tier pit bosses, you can do a similar thing, except you're going to want to sometimes hold your Flame Shield and teleport to avoid or immune the big echo attacks. Almost all the actual boss attacks you can just soak. The one that really hurts is that Sea Witch's like summoning pool. The water she shoots up just destroys for some reason. And so that can one-shot me, but I'm still able to soak it sometimes. And then you can also soak some of the smaller echo attacks, but at the high tier pit levels, some of the bigger ones will get you. So just use your Flame Shield to immune it or use your teleport to get out of the way. And that's how you blast stuff as a Starfall Sorcerer. Alright, now let's talk about Immortal Flame Shield real quick. At first, I thought this was really dumb because it makes the game much less interactive since you no longer have to worry about taking damage. But the reality is, our class is so weak compared to the other classes that in order to even come close to competing, we have to put everything we possibly can into damage, and that leaves us with basically nothing left for defense. On top of that, building defensively for Sorcerer feels terrible because it really doesn't change anything. We still get one-shot. This is the first Sorcerer build I've played that can actually sit there and soak real damage, and that's only because we have maxed out health rolls and are constantly generating huge barriers with our cooldowns. I was working really hard on a Chain Lightning build before this, and I just could not get it to work because regardless of whether I built fully offensively or fully defensively, I got one shot by the pit bosses either way. As I'm sure many of you can relate, this is a very frustrating feeling because it means those defensive build choices actually don't matter. You're going to get one shot regardless, so you might as well just build full offense and just do your best to dodge everything. And this just really comes back to poor class design. Once you've gotten one shot enough, Immortal Flame Shield starts to sound pretty cool. So I've been working to see if we can eventually evolve this build into an Immortal Flame Shield version with the proper gear rolls, and although I'm not quite there yet, I do think we can get there. Keep in mind guys, this is experimental, not 100% confirmed yet, a few things may change, but to do this we're basically going to need to combine all the Immortal Flame Shield tactics into one. We need to find a couple pieces of gear with big cooldown reduction rolls, we need to max out the ranks of our Flame Shield, we need to get to the 200% attack speed cap while running Hectic Aspect, which we're already doing, we need to get near perfect tempers for Flame Shield duration on chest, pants, and amulet, and then we need to hit those tempers a couple times with Masterwork and crits. All this combined with Ice Blade's CDR tempers on rings to always keep 6 Ice Blades up, giving us the maximum possible amount of active cooldown reduction. The cool thing about this is the only pieces of gear we're going to have to change from what we're already running is our chest, pants, and amulet. All the other gear we're already building can carry over into the Immortal version. If you're interested in this, basically what you want to keep an eye out for as you're farming endgame is a chest piece with max ranks of Flame Shield, ideally as a greater affix, pants with max rank of Firebolt, ideally as a greater affix, and you're going to need an armor roll on one of those, and then an amulet with a max roll of cooldown reduction, ideally as a greater affix. You're then going to need to temper these with Flame Shield duration, ideally toward the higher end of the roll window. If you brick a couple BIS items on the way, it's going to feel terrible, as I can confirm. We're then going to need to hit the Flame Shield ranks and Flame Shield duration tempers a couple times with Masterworking crits. And the whole idea here is we're trying to extend our Flame Shield duration to be up as long as possible while simultaneously reducing the cooldown of it as much as possible, to the point where by the time the Flame Shield runs out, it's off cooldown again. With this build, we're going to have to basically spool up to Immortality over like 10 to 15 seconds because it's not going to kick in until we have 6 Ice Blades out. So still having max health rolls on our other gear is going to help us survive this wind-up period and hopefully soak any small gaps we might experience in the Flame Shield with all of our barriers and ice armor. And in this version, guys, if we are able to achieve full Immortality, I might end up dropping Teleport for Firewall so I can actually cast it for 100% uptime, and that's mainly going to make our boss damage much more consistent. Also, since we don't need damage reduction anymore with Immortality, running Aspect of Fortune on chest will give us an extra 25% lucky hit that's active basically all the time, and that will help us proc more firewalls. And I'd also probably drop my Healthy Meteor boots for Esus and move Hectic Aspect to my Fire Shield legs. Also potentially swapping all the rubies to Topaz for 500 more intellect if we don't need the health anymore. Alright, now let's talk gear. Starting with the star of the show, our helmet, the Starfall Coronet. So the main thing that's important with this, guys, is getting a unique affix that's 6 seconds. Because this is really what we need to do our whole crazy cooldown reduction loop. You can see with my cooldown reduction, it's actually at 4.5 seconds. We are at 25% cooldown reduction right now. And most of that is coming from the Starfall Coronet itself. As well as, I really wish, like, if that was a greater affix CDR roll that I had dinked twice with the Masterworking, that would be sick. But really the main thing here, guys, is that the Meteor ranks, although you'd love for them to matter, to be honest, they don't matter a ton right now. I still like to keep Meteor maxed out because it does a little bit, but you'd be fine with a 2-roll in Meteor. You don't really need to hit it with Masterworking either. A high lucky hit roll is going to give you more firewalls. High max life roll is obviously really good. Cooldown reduction is probably the most important roll of the regular affixes here, but you're really going to be fine if your Masterworking hits cooldown reduction, lucky hit chance, or max life. Okay, next we're going to chest. So there's 2 things that are important when you're making a build, guys. You're going to want to try to get to armor cap. So see how it says in the tooltip now 9,230 armor is required for armor cap. So you want to make sure you get there. Then you want to make sure all your resistances are at 70% or higher. So basically to hit this armor cap, you're going to want to find at least one piece of gear, which is going to have to be our chest or our legs with an armor roll. And you want it to be a little high in the window because basically what you're going to do is add a temper roll for armor percentage and then run skulls in your rings. And that, as you can see, once you get your chest masterworked a little bit, is going to get you over that armor cap. I was actually running 3 skulls in my jewelry up until I leveled this enough and I could pull one out for a diamond. Honestly, you don't even really need this diamond because we're 8% above cap anyways. But, there's not really anything else to put there. And then for the other 2 affixes besides armor, for chest, you're just going to want max life and intelligence. Then for our hands, we have our Flame Weavers. These are probably the most important item out of everything we have. You really want to try to get as close to a 70% affix roll. So something really important with this build, guys, is we are trying to get to the 200% attack speed cap, and it's very possible with all the aspects we are running without any crazy attack speed gear required. So a Flame Weaver attack speed roll high in the window is going to be important, and that's basically because we want to get this Flame Weaver attack speed to 30%, and that's going to make it so for the first bucket of attack speed, we're not going to need attack speed on any other pieces of gear, because if we can get this affix on our Flame Weavers to 30%, we are going to get 20% from Aspect of the Moonrise, and that's going to put us at 50%, and then we're going to get the other 50% from Esus. So for attack speed on your gear, guys, you do not want to exceed 30%, because with the aspects we're running, for the first bucket, we already have 70% just through our aspects. So 30% attack speed on gear is what you're going for, and you already have a roll of it on Flame Weaver. So I suggest, I don't even need this attack speed. I need it right now, right? Because see, my Flame Weavers are low, but as soon as I get better Flame Weavers and masterwork them all the way up, if I can get this attack speed to 30%, I'm going to try to find a new ring without this attack speed roll on it, or maybe, because I haven't enchanted this one yet, maybe enchant it and re-roll that attack speed to something like Critical Strike. And damage to burning is probably the least important to fix here, guys. So if your masterworking crits hit attack speed, depending on where your base roll is at for attack speed on these, you might actually need 1 or 2 masterworking crits to hit that to get it to 30%. But if at Masterworking 12 it's already at 30% because you have a high roll, you want to try to hit Firebolt first and then Devouring Blaze, but both are good. Okay, so for pants, guys, the main thing we are looking for is max ranks to Firebolt. And if you could find greater affix max ranks to Firebolt with max life on them, those would be goated. You don't really need this life per second roll here. Sometimes it's nice to have at least 1 life per second roll to regen a little bit when you're not taking damage, but really not necessary. If I could, I would trade that out for intelligence. I could enchant it, but it's a big, you know, greater affix, and so we're just living with it. But ideally, max life in Firebolt is what you want here. And then first temper work for max life. And then for this second temper, both on your pants and your boots, you can either go for barrier generation, which I think would probably be the best in the end. But I was basically experimenting with some more lucky hit crowd control to help me with mobbing. And so if you're having trouble like mobbing in higher tier pit and you feel like you need more crowd control, it might be worth basically going for, on all 3 of these, for that second temper, going for, you know, stun or freeze. I think because you already have immobilize for your meteor, so going for like stun or freeze on these 3 lucky hits, I think would be really good. Oh, I forgot to mention the aspect on the chest, guys. So it's going to be ever living, so we're going to get that 25% damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. Most everything's going to be vulnerable from all our ice blades that are out. And then on legs, we are running Aspect of Might, and that's going to give us another 20% damage reduction basically all the time from every time we cast Firebolt. So for Masterworking here, guys, you really want to try to hit Firebolt. Like, the dream is, I'm pretty sure if you hit it 3 times, it can rank up 3 times. I know some of these are kind of wonky. I don't know the exact details of, you know, if you hit it 3 times, does it rank up 3 times or does it only rank up twice? So, you know, I've hit it twice now on these pants, and it did rank up both times. So for sure, you can get it to go from 3 to 5 at 4 and at 8 Masterworking. And then, you know, we'll see. Hopefully I hit it at 12 and it goes to 6. That would be the ideal. If it doesn't, if it just is capped at 5, then max life would be the next one you want. If anyone can confirm that in the comments, that would be dope. I tried like Googling like max roll potential for Masterworking and couldn't find shit. Okay, so for boots, we're going to want max life int and ranks to meteor. Again, the ranks to meteor, they're like cool, and if meteor ever gets buffed, they're going to be awesome, but it's not super essential. So, you know, I got these boots before I had everything like fully tested out, and like I said earlier, I started this build going all in on meteor, and so I have some greater affix meteor boots that are pretty nice, but you could trade that roll for like movement speed if you were wanting something like that instead of the meteor ranks. The meteor ranks do help, it's just marginal right now. And then for the temper on boots, I really like teleport cooldown reduction just to feed back into the cooldown reduction loop. Also with the patch that's about to hit, shimmering teleport's going to be 4 seconds instead of 3, and teleports up like every 6 or 7 seconds with CDR on it, with ice blaze up. So you're going to be able to have that 30% damage reduction from shimmering teleport up like most of the time if you're continuously teleporting. And then we are running Hectic Aspect on boots, and this is feeding into our cooldown reduction loop. So for necklace, the main ones we want are max life and critical strike chance. Move speed, obviously nice. We don't have any move speed with this build, so getting move speed somewhere, either on your boots or neck, helps a little bit. To be honest, the only time it's annoying is like when you're running around, you know, outside of combat. And even then, it's not so bad. But like when you're in combat fighting stuff, like because of how much your teleport is up and how much your dodge is up, you don't really feel the move speed difference. I don't. You know, and you can carry some other boots with you, Esus or something, and use those to zoom around. But I think the dream necklace roll would be if this move speed on here was ranks to Devouring Blaze. So max life, ranks to Devouring Blaze, and crit strike chance would be super goated. And then when you're masterworking, hitting literally any of those is going to be good. I think Devouring Blaze ranks and then crit strike chance are probably the highest value ones. And then for your defensive temper, you're going to want to go for max life again. And for your offensive temper, you want to go for pyromancy attack speed. And I've just bricked too many things, guys. And so if I get something like fire damage on like a really good necklace like this, I'm just going to settle, you know? I've just burned too much gear and it's too annoying, too painful. So if you get a good fire damage roll, you can take it. And really what we need here, guys, is between these 5 pieces of gear, so between our necklace, 2 rings, and our 2 weapons, we need 3 pyromancy attack speed rolls. And if we're able to get those, once we get our gear masterworked up to level 12, those 3 combined should get us right around 40%. And the reason that is because Pyromancy attack speed is in the second attack speed bucket. And so we already covered the first attack speed bucket. We're basically there between Esu's aspect of the Moonrise, and that puts us at 70%. Attack speed on Flameweaver can get us to 100%, and we get 30% here. So that's bucket 1. Bucket 2 is going to be accelerating aspect. And so we're going to get 25% attack speed whenever our meteors critically strike. And then we are going to get 30% attack speed on our basic attacks from Rapid. And so this is putting our Firebolt at 55% attack speed for bucket 2. And so basically we need to cover 45% Pyromancy attack speed. And so if you get 3 decent Pyromancy attack speed tempers, and then you masterwork those 3 pieces up to rank 12, those 3 Pyromancy attack speed rolls should get you right around 45%. And with all that stuff together, you are going to be right at the 200% attack speed cap. So anyways, if you like miss a Pyromancy attack speed roll on one of these pieces, you know, you can try to get it on like one of your weapon pieces. You basically need it on 3 out of 5 of these guys. And then the aspect for our neck is going to be Moonrise, and we're doing this to get the extra 50% out of it, so our multiplier is going to be 120% instead of 80%. For both of our rings, guys, the super ideal would be max life, critical strike chance, and lucky hit chance. I think intelligence is like right there with lucky hit chance. All lucky hit chance is going to do is give us more firewalls, but intelligence obviously super important for, you know, damage scaling. So either intelligence or lucky hit chance on rings. Honestly, I'd probably, like, if I could choose, or if in the perfect world, I would do one on each. I would do a big int roll on one and a big lucky hit roll on the other. And that's probably what I'll put in the build planner, actually. So for our ring tempers, we are looking for Ice Blade cooldown reduction on both. And then again, we are looking for Pyromancy attack speed. You can see I have this completely insane ring, and I just bricked the shit out of it with fire damage over time. That's the worst one you could get in this category, I think. And so that sucks. But I would love for this to be Pyromancy attack speed. I've had terrible luck getting Pyromancy attack speed. It's actually so stupid because there's 5 in that category and you only have 5 rolls. So you literally have a 20% chance to get it and you only get 5 chances. So like, it's so easy to miss that. Like, imagine having a 5-sided die and you need to hit a 5 and you get 5 rolls. Every time you roll, it's a 20% chance. You can miss it easy. It sucks. So that's why between these 5 pieces, guys, basically go for Pyromancy attack speed on all of them. And if you get like a good fire damage roll or like a good fire critical strike damage roll, just settle, right? And then we already mentioned it with the attack speed cap, but for our aspects here, we are going with accelerating and rapid to get us to that 200%. And then for our weapons, for our offhand, we're really looking for a good cooldown reduction roll here. And if you could get a GA, a greater affix cooldown reduction, that would be goated. But the most important thing on both your weapons, guys, is getting this Firebolt projectiles to cast twice. And this is another super annoying one to try to get. The other reason I mentioned like trying to get Pyromancy attack speed on your jewelry is because it's super hard to get your weapons to land both Firebolt and Pyromancy attack speed. Because like if we go over to the dude, it's so dumb. Like both those categories have 5 fucking things in them. So you have a super low chance to hit what you need. You only get 5 rolls. So first and most important, you want to try to roll this weapon slot for Firebolt projectiles to cast twice. So you got to get lucky here. And then once you hit that, you're going to want to do Pyromancy finesse. And again, you just need 3 out of 5 Pyromancy attack speed rolls. So if you have it on your jewelry, you're good. But on this, you could literally get anything besides mastery damage and fire damage over time. So you need to hit either Pyromancy attack speed, fire damage, or Pyromancy critical strike damage. You don't need to hit, you're trying to hit. You know, I'm running a couple bricked pieces. Most of mine's pretty decent. I mean, I fucking have bricked way too many that are gone now. But basically, guys, we want to try to get this chance for Firebolt projectiles to cast twice to 100%. That's the goal, is we want every single Firebolt cast to cast a second one, right? Okay, so back to the offhand, we're really looking for max life, critical strike chance, and cooldown reduction. This is a really good offhand. I'm pretty satisfied with it. Low crit chance roll, but that's all good. So you can see, guys, all my cooldown reduction is coming from this offhand because I have it on the base part of the affix, right, just for being an offhand. And then I have it as a roll, so this is giving me like 17%. And then my coronet's giving me 10%. So I'm getting shorted some cooldown reduction. That's bullshit. I should be at 17.4, 10.1. Yeah, so I should be at 27.5. So I'm getting screwed. This game is working as intended. All right, and then for our main hand, we're going to want a wand for the lucky hit chance to get us more firewalls. We want an int roll. We really want a max life roll. This is the one piece that I'm missing a max life roll on. And so with this, we could definitely crest 50k when we're potted up. And then for the third affix, you can go for something like, critical strike damage or vulnerable damage or something like that. I was wanting to experiment with something like a life on hit. If you have like a life per second roll on your legs, you don't really need the life per hit. But if you don't have any sort of regen on your armor, I think life per hit would be mostly good for like boss fights. But yeah, that's sort of like something I'm testing. You're going to be just fine with critical strike damage, vuln damage, anything like that. And then again, we just talked about it for the tempers. You're going for firebolt first, and then you're going for pyromancy attack speed if you don't have it covered yet. If you already have 3 rolls of that, go for fire damage or critical strike damage. Oh, and then aspects here, we are running shredding blades on our offhand for the 30% multiplier and the ice blade synergy. And then on our main hand, we are running Esus for the attack speed cap. And then for gems, we already talked about the jewelry. We're running full rubies in our armor. And then we are running topaz in our weapons for the basic attack damage. The reason I'm not running sapphire for like vuln damage or emerald for like crit damage is because our crit chance isn't quite high enough for emerald to be better than vuln damage. And like vuln damage would affect like our meteor and like our ice blades, but those are a very small percentage of our damage compared to our firebolt shooting through the firewall. And so I would rather add another 90% to our firebolt floor, and then things like this 120% multiplier on our necklace are going to multiply against that extra 90%, right? So basically trying to max the firebolt multiplier. Hello? All right, and then real quick, I want to show you what you can sort of be building on the side if you're looking to potentially pursue the Immortal Flame Shield version of this build if it works, which I really think it can with the right rolls. My rolls are not quite there yet. This necklace, it's good, but what we really want is we need a higher Flame Shield duration roll. Like that roll is going to be too low in the window. It's at the bottom of the window, and I'm about to brick this thing, and so I just kept it there. But we really we're going to need like a greater affix cooldown reduction, and we are going to need like a max roll flame shield duration. Like I think those are going to be the most important things for your necklace. The other rolls, obviously these are decent. You can do whatever you think is good, but the main things we're going to need to accomplish immortality is big CDR roll, ideally greater affixed, and then max flame shield duration roll or close to max. And then when we're masterworking, we need to hit either of those, like with every time. So either hitting your flame shield duration or hitting your cooldown reduction with all 3 of them is going to give you the best shot at a necklace that will work. And then for our armor, this is a pretty good piece. Basically what you're looking for is flame shield ranks, and then you're wanting to get a good flame shield duration temper, just like on your necklace. And then for masterworking, you're going to need to hit flame shield or this flame shield duration temper with everyone as well on the way up. And then for legs, similar story, except you're going to need firebolt instead of fire shield. And you're again going to need a close to max roll flame shield duration temper, and you're going to need to hit that baby. On legs, you want to hit that 3 times because you don't have anything else. Obviously, firebolt's going to be good for damage, but if we're really going for immortality, we want to hit that flame shield duration as much as possible. It's really hard to hit the same thing 3 times, so, we're just trying to do our best. And then the second temper on these guys, we're going to want to go for lucky hit crowd control of any kind, kind of like I was talking about. You could try on these pieces as well. And then same thing with the offensive roll on this one. You want to just make sure you have 3 out of 5 of these as pyromancy attack speed. And then the last thing I'm probably going to do for the Immortal version is drop these meteor boots for Esus, and that's just going to give us big damage bump with much bigger crit chance a lot of the time. And since we don't really need the meteor ranks and we don't need the max life, and the cooldown reduction on evade is not going to be nearly as important, I think Esus is going to be a really good option to swap for boots. And then basically when we do that, we lose Hectic on our boots. So we're going to move Hectic to our legs. And that's going to cover that. And then we don't need the damage reduction on chest if we're immortal. So we are going to turn that into Aspect of Fortune. And that's going to give us 25% lucky hit chance when we have a barrier, which is all the time. And that is going to let us spawn a lot more firewalls. Boom. That's it for gear. Was there anything else? Oh, you can carry around like a meteorite ring if you want. So like if you're just mobbing on stuff, if you put this Aspect of Shattered Stars on a ring, the meteorites are going to burn as well. So you're basically going to get like a lot more burning ground. So basically like I'll swap this out if I'm mobbing like low level stuff where I don't need max attack speed. Sometimes I'll swap this ring for this rapid loop. I mean really either or. And that's basically just going to give you more burning ground to trigger more firewalls and more sort of epic meteor, starfall, rain awesomeness. Oh, and then I just want to show you guys this. This is like one of the best pieces of gear I've ever gotten, I think. And the very first time I enchanted it, I got this Devouring Blaze roll, dude. I couldn't believe it. I was like, what in the fuck? So I was like, this is going to be my Immortal neck. But it doesn't have a cooldown reduction roll, and I'm terrified to fuck with the greater fixes because I might need like a build where I need that vulnerability at some point. And then I also, the very first rolls, I got Pyromancy attack speed, but it's a min roll, and I got Flame Shield duration, and it's basically a min roll. So I still have all 5 of my tempers on this, but I'm like so terrified to try to re-roll those because I don't want to brick this thing. So I'm just sort of like holding it, not really using it, waiting to see what I should do with it. Probably sit like this till next season. Sometimes I put it on for the move speed. Anyways. Alright, so that's gear. Now let's check out our skills real quick. We are going max rank Firebolt. Obviously, we have ours at 14 between all of our gear. And then we are going for Glinting Firebolt. This one doesn't do anything for us because we don't need mana. Skipping everything here. Started with Elemental Dominance, but we don't need it because our meteor damage is crap anyways. Then we got our defensives. We are going Flame Shield up to the stun, and this is mainly to help us with mobbing. This actually helps a ton with mobbing. Also, this 50% increase radius helps a lot to trigger firewalls when mobbing because it burns everything around us. Teleport, we're going for damage reduction. We need it. This is going to be 4 seconds after the patch. Ice Armor, we are going for Shimmering to feed into our cooldown reduction loop so we can Ice Armor more. 1 in Elemental Attunement, this is all we need. We're going to be proccing this every 10 seconds basically because we're critting all the time. 3 in Glass Cannon, it hurts but we need the multiplier. Coming down to Conjuration, we are going for Ice Blades with cooldown reduction. Lucky Hit maxed out. Conjuration Mastery maxed out. So when we have our 6 Ice Blades up, we are going to be at, basically 6 stacks of this. So pretty nice multiplier and nice movement speed. Then we are going in 1 in Align the Elements and 3 in Protection. And this is super important because this is going to enable our giant barrier. And when we're potted up, this is giving us about 15,000 plus. With where my max health is right now, like close to 40,000. That's going to give us, when I drink a Fortitude, I'm out because I've been drinking a lot.
Come, come, my glass is clean.
All right, so with where we're at right now, we are at 38,500. And then if we pop a Fortitude, we are going to be at 46,000. And then you can also pop some Redamine Buzz if you want to go up even more. I like using this Chorus of War. It's just really good. The all stats and everything. So we can see once we're at like 46,000, 1 Meteor is going to give us 15,500 barrier from Protection. And these barriers from Protection don't stack, but they refresh. So like, if you call it a Meteor, take a hit to the face for 10,000, and you call it on another Meteor right after, you'll be back to, 15,000 barrier. What does stack with it is Ice Armor. And so, you can basically, you're going to get that Protection barrier when you cast Ice Armor base, then you're going to have the Ice Armor on top of it. Ice Armor is actually going to scale off of max health in this patch too. So our Ice Armor is going to be way bigger when we cast it. We're going to get the Ice Armor, so probably when we cast it after the patch, it's going to give us like 60% barrier. But the main thing with Ice Armor is if you're attacking when it's up before it drops off, you can build it up really big. So having the base barrier there from Protection is going to let you build that up. I like to use my Ice Armor like a second before my flame shield is off cooldown. That lets you build that like buffer up as you're damaging with that like last second of flame shield, so that as soon as flame shield runs out, you got a nice big barrier stack ready to take all those hits to the face. Anyways, I digress. Back to skills. Where were we? Protection passive, yes. Meteor, I still like to keep it max rank, guys. It still does something, it's just not a ton. And then going to Wizard's Meteor for the Immobilize, maxed out Inner Flames for the multiplier, maxed out Devouring Blaze for the multiplier, 1 in Crippling Flames just to give us this small chance for all of our fire spells to give us a little more crowd control. 1 in Firewall for the enchantment, and then going to Mage's Firewall so that when stuff walks out of our firewall, it continues burning. And then down here, 1 in Fiery Surge just to get to these two. So the most important one is Soulfire just for the little extra multiplier. And then between these two, I've kind of been juggling my points back and forth between these two, trying to see which one feels better. This one isn't going to do a ton because not a huge percentage of our damage is burning damage. But it's something, you know, it's some extra damage. And then this one is like, we don't really need it if we have like life per second on our legs or like life per hit on our weapon. Or if we're, you know, potting well. Really what I think is ideal probably is like running this 3 out of 3 here most of the time, and then maybe moving those to here for like, I don't know, harder mobbing or whatever. But I'm a little torn. I don't like having this at 0 because I like to get some amount of healing to just keep me topped off so I don't have to pot like every time I take damage. So I think this split like 1 and 2 is kind of the sweet spot. And then for our keystone, we are going for Esu's. And this is just sick for this build. Does all kinds of good stuff. You know, extra crit chance, extra crit damage. And then it's enabling our 50% attack speed from our Ancient Flame aspect. And then for our enchantments, we are going with Ice Blades for the cooldown reduction loop that we've been talking about a ton. And then Firewall for the Firewall procs we've been talking about a ton. Okay, so hopping over to the Paragon board. Guys, I've spent so long staring at this Paragon board, and it's resulted, I think, in probably one of the best ones I've ever made. I mean, it is the best Paragon board I think I've ever put together, and I've changed it a bunch, modded it a bunch, but it's to the point where literally every single point is exactly where I need it to be to get exactly the max value of everything we need. And basically what we're trying to do is hit every single damage reduction node that exists. And literally the only damage reduction node that we haven't gotten, the big ones, is the chill damage reduction from chilled on the Icefall board, which we don't need anyways because we're not chilling anything. So we literally have every single damage reduction node that we can get. And so let's go through it here. So at the starter board, we're coming up here. We're grabbing all this juice. We need this max life. We need this elemental damage. This gives us max life too. We need this resistance with this max life, so we're going to basically come up here, come down, scoop this, come up, and we're doing dex here. I usually do int in this socket, guys. You're going to be able to save 2 points if you do int instead of dex, but I had to do dex because we only have one int glyph that we're using, and I had to fit it in up here. And so we are doing dex here. We're going to socket in tactician. That's going to give us this nice little bonus to these 2 nodes. So we're just grabbing this dex to turn it online. Then we're coming up here, and this is going to be our enchantment master board. If you guys have been following my channel for a bit, you know this is my favorite board, just like this. I've been using this board here for a long time. I think it's still goated. Usually I'll make my way up here and get this non-physical too, but we had to pull this stuff out to get to the rest of the damage reduction we wanted. And so I'd love to get this stuff too, but we just don't have enough points. We're spread to the absolute max here. So we're coming up like this. We are moving like this, and we're coming over here to this non-physical. Then we're coming over here. We are getting reinforced in this socket. That's going to give us the nice bonus to these 2 nodes, and that's going to give us our damage reduction. So this is the only damage reduction glyph we're running, and it's really the only one that's going to give us max value that exists. We're not close all the time, so territorial is not going to be great. And yeah, none of the other ones really work for us. So we're taking the one that works for us, which is barrier. We're going to have barriers up literally all the time. And then we're turning this on with the surrounding willpower, grabbing this resistance on the way, coming up here and coming into the frigid fate board. Coming down here to oppressive, getting this full damage with the bonus for damage reduction. And then coming over here, socketing in destruction, grabbing this dex to turn it online. coming up here, again through more vuln damage, and then over here to Frigid Fate. And we have this at 25%, and this is getting carried a bit by our Enchanter glyph. And so I was running Elementalist here for the multiplier, but I think we're going to get higher value in the end. Running Enchanter, getting 80%. You guys know I love Enchanter too, so I have a hard time not running it anyways. But we're going to get an extra 80%, magic damage here that's going to get multiplied against, and then that's going to boost our Frigid Fate up to like 25%, and this is without building any cold damage. We have no cold damage on our gear. All this 25% is coming from our Paragon board. Okay, so then we're working our way up here, getting this damage reduction, and then coming up into the Burning Instinct board, up here to this damage reduction, and then we are coming over here, socketing Flame Feeder here, and this is going to give us damage to burning, also 10% multiplier to burning enemies, which is going to be basically everything. And then coming over here, getting this damage reduction from burning, the dex to activate the glyphs, and then up here into our Searing Heat board. So we are going to come up, get our fire damage, and then hit this socket with Enchanter, grab this 40 in to turn it online down here through the fire damage crit over to Searing Heat. This is going to easily be at 30%. We're at a lot of fire damage. We're at, almost 500% damage with fire. So no shortage there on that glyph or on that node to get it to 30%. So then we're coming down here, getting Keeper of Flames, more damage reduction from burning, and then down here into Ceaseless Conduit, and then pathing like this, grabbing Exploit, just grabbing, we're literally just passing through as efficiently as we can here, grabbing just 25 dex. Ceaseless Conduit's like a really good corner board if you just need to turn on a dex node and pass through, because you can get this really efficient path and grab all this dex and just go right through. So we're putting Exploit there, turn it online, and then we are ending with the Elemental Summoner board over here. And again, this is like a really good board to end with, I've found, if you're running a will socket here, or a will glyph, because you can do this. This is like 14 points. You can do this really efficient path, get this all the way here. It's just a straight line. You get all the will you need. You got to do one extra point to get that last will, but that's going to give you the 25 you need to turn a will glyph online. So we're running Pyromaniac here, and this is for the fire damage multiplier. So that's the board setup. We are running 7 boards with 7 glyphs. We have 5 multiplier glyphs. We have Enchanter for the Frigid Fate thing, and then we have 1 damage reduction glyph, the one that works for us, which is Reinforced. So yeah, that is the Paragon board setup. I hope that made sense. And I think that's all I really got for this one, guys. So really appreciate you guys watching. I hope it was useful. I hope it made sense, and I hope some other people looking to use Meteor have a good time with this build. Let's go. All right. We got it.